Hey guys, we are going to work on our Doodle Notes. So, Doodle Notes principle is all the studies show that kind of like sketch notes, we are going to be working, you're going to be required to fill in some color. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, but you do have to add some color to your page. You can add in doodles. The difference between Doodle Notes and sketch notes is I am giving you the basic format of the things that you're going to be filling in as I give you some notes on this. So with this, you are going to be filling it in as you watch the video. You are going to be taking a photograph of it and you're going to be uploading the photograph as your evidence of completing this activity. So we're going to be looking at the difference between robots and humans for this one. And we are going to start with the components. So for a human, our side down here, we basically have 5 basic components. And those components are the body structure, the muscle system, the sensory system, a power source, and our brain system. Nothing new there, most of those things that you know. Now, when we go up here to the components for a robot, it's the same. They also have 5. But when we think about it, they're very similar to ours, but they're called different things. So they have a movable, physical structure. They also have some type of motor. Okay, they have a sensory system. They have a power supply. And then they have a computer brain. Pretty balanced. Okay, so when we look up here, we're going to look at something called the degrees of freedom. All that is how far the arm unit can move. It's a typical statistic on most robots. When you think about it, it's how much can they move. So on a human, our degree of freedom for our shoulder is 7. For the basic robot, their degree of freedom is 6. So they can't move quite as far as ours for just your basic. This is just your basic robotic arm. Okay, so from there, let's go on and talk about the arm itself. So for our arm, the purpose of our arm is we have our joints that we can move with our elbow. But when we're moving our elbow and when we're moving our shoulder, the basic purpose of our arm is to move our hand from one place to another. Okay? Now, when we look at the arm for a robot, little bit different. They have 7 metal segments. And again, remember, this is your basic. Okay, 7 metal segments, and they're joined with 6 joints. Okay, and then they have a step motor at each joint. And a step motor is just something where you can move it in incremental bits. Okay? But their purpose is to move the end effector from one place to another. So instead of a hand, they have an end effector. That's what this is an example of. So sometimes they can grip, sometimes they can pick something up, sometimes an end effector might be something like a screwdriver where their purpose is to screw something in, those kinds of things. So the last thing that we're going to talk about that they have in common is this balance system. So as a human, we learn to balance when we started to learn to walk as little kids, and it takes a combination of muscle contractions, right? Our muscles have to contract to make us walk, to make us stand up straight, to balance ourselves. Now, with a robot, the balance is a little bit more difficult because they don't have a muscle system. So theirs is a combination of piston movements. And then that is programmed into the computer. Now, some have built-in balance systems, which might be like a sequence of gyroscopes or a collection of gyroscopes. And a gyroscope is something that runs on like a ball and is always going to allow you to balance straight up. Okay, so the one thing that they don't have in common is this autonomous word. Okay, all autonomous means that it can act on its, excuse me, not double I, its own. Okay, there's no controller. Basically, it responds to outside stimuli. Think your Roomba robot. It acts on its own. You don't have to stand there with a remote control moving it. It goes up, it hits the wall, it knows to turn and come back. Hits the couch, turns around, and comes back. So that's all. When I do go to grade this, I am going to expect to see these elements all filled in, and I'm going to expect to see some forms of color. The whole page doesn't have to be colored in, but you do have to have color and it needs to make sense. So you can't just take a crayon and color all over the whole thing. As you can see, I've doodled around it, doodled in some of the areas, doodled in some of the bolts. Those are the kinds of things I'm going to expect. Have a good afternoon.